Austin.
Hi.
How are you, buddy? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Right on. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. A couple days back they asked, and I was like, "Man, are you kidding me? Like that's one of the best shows right now." Of course,
Yeah.
I'd love to have the guy on. So, before we get into your career and what a crazy career you've had as well, and I want to talk about diabetes and all that, and fighting through. I mean, that's crazy being
Yeah.
diagnosed at such a young age. I love your Instagram bio where you're eternally the third grader. Like, what is it about third grade? Like, why was it so good, right?
Yeah, like third grade, it's when you have a little like mental capacity and comprehension,
Yeah,
but you also still have that sense of fun. Um, I think second grade was all I was just had a crush on my teacher
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the whole year. Um, but like third grade was that tipping point, whether it was like baseball, little league, or just like being in the camp play, like getting a bigger role. It was just, it's a general kind of like right prepubescent that things don't get complicated, and you're always as an actor trying to get back to that place where you could just have fun,
Love it.
and not worry about you know all the life stuff.
Yeah, totally. Like as I'm getting things ready for you, man, I laughed out loud because for me, like same thing, like grade three, that's the year I remember it being so cool. And it's actually the year that I moved away from Vancouver to up north, up to Kitimat. So it was kind of a
Yeah.
transitional year for me as well. It was weird because I had to leave good friends that I'd had my whole life. And but yeah, I remember grade three being just so badass, and I just love that about your bio. So it seems that there's a bit of a buzz around your career right now as of late. Hey, like, so let's get into the marvelous Miss Maisel, and you're playing Alvin in that series.
Yeah.
And I would say, Austin, that I ask like probably 8 out of 10, guests like, what are you binge watching right now? What are the shows that you can't get enough of?
Yeah.
And that show is consistently, mentioned from all of the guests that we have on this podcast. I'm curious, like, because you're coming in on the final season. How weird is that to come into a series that's that critically acclaimed, or in the final season, or is it even weird at all?
Well, I mean, if I didn't put enough pressure on myself before, with any project, coming into a show like this, knowing that you're going to be among, Emmy and award-winning writers, producers, production designers,
Mm,
uh, directors, let alone actors, cinematographers. It's just like the top level of everything in the industry. And it really, really was about putting pressure on myself, but, you know, using everything that I learned in my career up until that point to be as prepared and relaxed as possible. Because I find for myself, at least, when I'm prepared and I don't have to worry about like lines or like simple things like that you would think, would make you screw up, or when you get nervous, like screw you up.
mm,
That it was really one of those like using everything in my, in my toolbox, as it were,
yeah.
to like come to set prepared and also flexible enough to have fun, but also, like change on the drop of a hat if something wasn't working and I got a different direction, or they had, they do a lot of in this. What I learned is, watching it, you get to see they have one shots, oneers, they call them, where
Yeah.
it's like probably about 4 pages of material. Every character that you see, it's all in the same shot. And like a play, you only get one shot at it, So, unlike a play, you get several takes. So if you do it, like usually those takes take like 15, at least 15 takes, those shots. So everyone in every situation, cameras, sound, like, acting, everything has to be perfect for that to be the shot, because there's nothing to cut away to. So knowing
Wow.
that early on, I was like, oh, this is testing, this is testing my skills. But also, I've been a huge fan of the show, so a lot of my energy was spent convincing myself I didn't know anyone in this world. And like when I meet Mrs. Maisel or Midge, she like I don't know who she is when Austin knows very well who she is and what the
Sure.
show is in a
Yeah,
greater sense.
yeah, that's really cool. And like, would you say that this is the most proud that you've been working on such a critic's darling? I guess, lack of better words.
Yeah, it's that weird combination of it's gotten the most acclaim and I'm stepping into it with that. It wasn't like, it's not like I was there from the beginning, a
Yeah,
part
you
of.
didn't help build it from the ground up, but
Right, exactly. So I'm stepping in kind of like I guess feeding off the wake of their their ride, and
yeah,
also luckily getting in at the last stop because as an actor you audition for tons of shows. You can't watch everything, but you audition for occasionally shows that you watch and that you're a big fan of. And luckily this was that. I got it, and it was a situation where I really like I really felt like it was a long time coming, but it was like every situation when you're like, oh, that's a sign that, even like uh pulled, like I drink tea at night and they have like sometimes fortunes on the tea bags.
yeah,
And this one that I auditioned, sent in my audition, and I had a cup of tea that night, and it said it was like an Aristotle quote that said, there is something of the marvelous, in
no, no way.
nature, right? And I was just like, dude, um
Yeah,
uh and there's, I got those a couple times actually, and I kept it with me, in my wallet or my pocket for most of the shoot. But like things like that where it was, I feel like both accomplishment as an actor, but also the show is getting the attention and the acclaim that it has, because I felt like I've done good work before,
mm,
and sometimes not everyone watches it or sees it. There's it's a difference when everyone's watching it and people on the show are like getting recognition for their brilliant work, and I'm getting to watch it from the inside and see how uh, the sausage is made on a show this kind of
yeah,
popular and good,
yeah. That's very cool, man. Very cool.
yeah.
Tell us about Beauty and the Beast.
Shot it in Canada. So we shot in Toronto, but yeah, that was a an amazing run we had. We had, People's Choice Awards, we had great fans, beasties.
Mm,
For me at least, great character when you get to play a regular character on a show. Over the course of 70 episodes, they get to like really flesh out the ups and downs of a character. Sometimes shows that have been on forever, it's a little crazy what they challenge the characters with.
yeah,
But in a compact 70 episode arc, to see, a character that I've auditioned for and played before, where it's either a tech geek or, in my case, in JT's case, my character was a biochemistry professor. I played teachers before. I played tech geeks before. I played, not biochemists, but like, kind of like just people that were the people that are brought in to make, like figure things out,
mm,
and also explain things to the audience. If it's like a hacking thing, I always had to explain it, or if it's like a medical thing, and that actually connected to my diabetes, my type 1 diabetes. So I was kind of prepared on the medical side because I was drawing up needles, giving, kind of tech talk in the sense of, medical, jargon, which is a doctor show. If you ever been on a doctor show, it's like that's the hardest thing for people that are actors that aren't doctors to
right.
like, kind of give out diagnoses and all that without missing a beat and make it as casual as a doctor would. But it was one of those shows that I got to do a ton of things as the character, really, flex every aspect of it and go outside the box. I had a love interest, I had a superpower at some point. So like, little childhood dreams, being fulfilled. And,
Totally.
I had like, emotional highs, emotional lows. I had the comedy. It kind of provided me, and I think the audience, with every aspect and everything that makes up a good show, or a show that fans keep coming back to. The comedy, the drama, the romance, the action, got hung from the ceiling a couple times, got thrown on my butt a couple times, and then obviously stunt people took over, and, give them credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
But it was really a fun 4 years, better part of 4 years in Toronto. I've liked living in different cities. I lived in Vancouver for a bit
Mm.
to shoot another series up there. And to me, it's like, I went to sleepaway camp growing up. So as an actor, when you get to go on location, or live in a certain city or a different city, I've had those adventures, and, it's been fun for my wife and I to have these like kind of little, pockets of or chapters of our lives that involve, employment, obviously, because that makes those things possible. But
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't change that for the world. It was such a big thing for me, and
Yeah.
such a fun experience.
Yeah, yeah, a couple great series that you worked in, man. Like really impressive. So when you think back, like you grew up in Brooklyn, when you think back to your childhood, um, like what were the first shows and movies and actors, I guess, that kind of really grabbed your attention as a little kid?
Well, I mean, I was lucky enough to grow up in a family, kind of like a nice Jewish family that was into comedy. My dad grew up working at the Catskills, ironically in Maisel. Their second season takes place in the Catskills.
Hmm.
So he really, like that generation um, of people in Brooklyn, went up for the summers to the mountains, to the Catskills, and, stayed in a hotel or a bungalow colony. And theater and entertainment and creativity were kind of part of that, because, like I said, when I was younger, I, went to sleepaway camp. So I think all that combined, like, allowed me to feel the possibility or the freedom to perform, dress up, and, like, I loved Halloween. I used to dress up all the time and kind of do that. Just, put on Dracula makeup, or,
Mm.
and I always jumped at the chance to kind of entertain, and it was kind of, in a sense, in my blood a little. So when my career in baseball, Major League Baseball, didn't amount to anything, uh, I I I stayed true with my acting and entertaining chops, and kind of followed that. And so, watching, I was a big, TV and film watcher, but I mean, I love Spielberg films, anything that he did, Goonies,
Yeah.
E.T., those 80s, 70s, 80s, even Jaws. We lived near a beach. We're in a beach community. So Jaws was like, there was definitely like a vibe where it was like real,
Yeah.
you'd see
That
that and you're
that could
like,
actually
you
happen,
know,
sure.
they'd call people in from, the water in the early 80s. And we would think, I mean, we're thinking Jaws, we're thinking huge sharks and all that stuff. And when it comes to TV shows, I grew up on, Family Ties and The Facts of Life, Different Strokes. Like,
Yeah.
these are old school,
Oh yeah.
people probably wouldn't know them because they don't really play that much anymore. But if anyone knows Family Ties, Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox, I don't know if you've seen his film. Still, you should definitely watch it,
No, haven't, not yet.
because if you grew up on his TV shows, and he's Canadian as well.
Of course you do.
He basically, they do this amazing editing job where they track his diagnosis and battle with Parkinson's
Mm.
through his career and through clips of him in different roles. So he's telling the story. You see this, kind of cutaway to interviews, and over the course of the film, you see his career take off, and you see it in the press, kind of like red carpets, public interviews, and
Mm.
it's cut together in such a way that you see, him experiencing this stuff while he's having this rise in his career. It's amazing. But I grew up on Michael J. Fox. Family Ties was one of those shows that, we loved, and
Yeah, same.
Different Strokes, and like I said, Facts of Life. Those three, I yeah, there was a couple other shows that I feel like, what was the Growing Pains was the other one, but I wasn't so much into that one.
Yeah,
Um, but even eventually, like even at a young age, a show like Cheers, and
yeah.
Roseanne and Seinfeld, these shows that kind of like cross the line between pure comedies and like real human arc, especially Roseanne. That was one of those shows that you had a ground, like a through line of real life, but the comedy that came out of like not being able to pay the bills or losing a job, that type of stuff, where a lower middle class family like myself, even though we were in Brooklyn and they were in the Midwest, there was a connection and understanding and appreciation as a young actor,
Mm.
or aspiring actor, to be like, I could be funny, I could play it real, and be poignant and kind of have, in a sense, have my cake and eat it too.
Hmm. And what are you binge watching right now?
I mean, if you're not watching like Succession,
Right.
then like as a TV enthusiast, you're completely missing out. Um, every episode's better than the next. We watch. I mean, we're starting another show that actually shoots in Toronto. What We Do in the Shadows.
Dude,
It's like
so
we're
good.
on our third go through right now, because we were like we were watching Seinfeld to go to sleep every night, and we're like, we've seen almost every episode multiple times, so we're like, let's go back to What We Do in the Shadows. And Barry is kind of, this season is crazy. So we watched those kind of like prime time. I like Only Murders in the Building. I got to work with um uh Michael Cyril Creighton. He's on Only Murders in the Building, and so I was a fan of the show before, and he got to work with him this season on Maisel. Also in Succession, imagine someone, he's on Only Murders and Maisel, and then Peter Friedman, and one of the other actresses from Succession is also on Maisel.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and so it's one of those, like, you can't get much luckier than that. When I don't know, back in the day, Chris Maloney on SVU, Law and Order SVU,
Oh
he
yeah.
was doing double duty on SVU, and uh oh, what was it? Oh, he was like, what did Oz? It was Oz in New York. So it
Yeah.
was like on an HBO show and an NBC show, and going back and forth. And it's like, wait, you're on both shows? Oh my God, if I could do that as an actor, be on such crazy shows. He's playing a cop and a prisoner, a cop in one and a prisoner in another.
Mhm.
That, play both worlds. Like, that's just keep working. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, what's the Morty Gunty Memorial Award? What's that given for?
Um, so it's a performing arts award. We in my high school, it was like a magnet school in New York. So you had to have certain grades in middle school to get, or junior high school to get into it.
Okay.
So there was two different programs, and they didn't really have a performing arts program, but they did have something called Sing, which is like a performance competition in New York. They've made movies about it, but I think it started in Brooklyn and maybe even at my high school. it's each grade performs against each other or competes against each other,
Mm.
and they write, perform, play the music for, write lyrics for a performance, a show. They have a theme. They, have their own art director. So it's a completely student run competition. There are obviously faculty advisors, but each year in the fall, in our school, it was only 3 grades. So it was sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And if you're a freshman, you were on the sophomore team. So there are dancers, there are singers, there are musicians, and then there are writers and artists. So every different aspect of creativity and collaboration, each grade competes, and then they put on two nights of performances, and there's a judging panel. And then at the end of the 2 performances, they tally the votes. And usually the juniors or seniors win. I rarely do the sophomores win, but it's like a huge thing. And it's a very it's the only thing at school in high school that was performing arts like. So when I did it the first time, I played sports too. So it was hard to balance those two. But for sophomore year, I was the art director. Junior and senior year, I was, junior year, I was just one of the actors, but I had like a pretty funny role named Poindexter. That was like a nerdy character that kind of brought the house down, and like I got to like really go over the top and do my best Urkel.
No, nice. Yeah.
And so my best white Urkel. And then the final year, I was the main character, and we finally won that last year. And we actually, the first night was canceled because there was a storm. There was like a nor'easter, and we only got to do one performance. So everything was judged in that one night, and I think we lucked out a little with that one. But that's why basically I got it, because I was so involved in that part of, I don't know if I was going to get an athletic award. So even though I was pretty good at sports, it's just, I definitely excelled in performing, and, was able to feel comfortable on stage, and more natural than most kids.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sure that probably catapulted you into what you're doing, today, give you some
Completely. Yeah.
belief in the product, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. I don't have you for very much longer, and I want to rip through a few other questions, kind of get to know you a little bit before we send you on your way. What was the music like in your house as a kid growing up?
Well, I was just talking about this. We had a record player. For the kids that don't know, that's vinyl. It spins on. I mean, they're probably into that now. But we had a record player, and my parents were big. My dad was more into jazz, but my mom was into Broadway and show tunes. So we had, Chorus Line, Annie, Grease, I almost would have dreams that it was playing and hear it in my dreams, and then wake up and then the record player was playing. So every year we went to see at least one Broadway show, usually a musical for kids. That was like our treat, to go into the city. Even though we're from Brooklyn, we rarely went into the city. Usually it was to go to the park, a museum, or to a Broadway show during the holidays, around Christmas. Show tunes, Michael Jackson, Billy Joel. We had albums, Michael Jackson. We had Thriller. We had that album. I used to play it and dance. I danced growing up too. So, the Ryan Gosling videos that are all over. There's videos of me kind of like that, but I wasn't as old as he was. I was much younger.
Nice. And of course, being from Brooklyn, you had to listen to Billy Joel.
Totally. Yeah. So that vibe. I also went to sleepaway camp, all through my childhood, and you tend to be influenced by the older campers. So from a young age, I was Beastie Boys, Bob Marley. I was listening to Steve Miller, the Steve Miller Band. These are things that before I even knew it was what Steve Miller Band was about. I'm listening to, their greatest hits, and we're like singing the music and the lyrics, and we have no idea what it means.
Yeah.
And that
Gangster of Love, like what?
yes, right, big old jet airliner. We used to like make up different lyrics to some of these songs that were a little racy. It was camp. It was sleepaway camp, so you get a little you have a little fun with that. But yeah, I remember memorizing every word with my entire bunk to Paul Revere, which is on
Nice.
License to Ill for the Beastie
Now
Boys.
here's a little story I got to tell about
About
three
three
bad
bad
brothers we know so well.
Yeah, I like even like the breaks. Like we for one reason, like those were when lyrics weren't written on you couldn't really like find the lyrics. You had to like listen to it over and over and over, and we taught ourselves it, and I still remember it to this day.
Yeah, yeah. What was your first concert you went to?
Billy Joel.
Billy Joel. Nice. Wow,
Yeah,
that's the
I
bar
did
right
go
up.
to Beastie Boys. Basically, I went back and forth between Billy Joel and Beastie Boys. I wound up going ultimately because I later on became an Elton John fan as well. So I went back and forth to he had a concert, Billy Joel and Elton John at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Um, that was their later. I think they had two tours. Maybe they just had one, but I went, like they played both songs, they played them together, like it was like two sets and then a third set where they kind of sang each other's songs. It was
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing. So we know that you love baseball. Do you give a shit about the NHL playoffs right now?
Well, I've always kind of been a Rangers fan, but hockey did what it's not like unless you had cable or the hockey, NHL, you never really necessarily could see every game, right? And I've used to go to at least one Ranger game. We used to get tickets from someone that had season tickets almost every season. And it's tough at the Garden. It's like kind of like a small stadium, and if you have a ticket, you're not giving it up like a season ticket.
Mhm.
But I did, like I still kind of pay attention until the Rangers get eliminated. And then
Like me and the Canucks. Like, nah,
then
once the
yeah,
Canucks, I'm done. I'm done
right,
for the year.
exactly.
Yeah.
But it was fun going like living in, Toronto um and Vancouver to like walk downtown, you know. I lived down the street from I could have walked to Vancouver to watch the Canucks play. The irony is that I heard stories about Mark Messier when he was on the Canucks, and he was one of the guys that won the Stanley Cup with the Rangers. Um, and we used to go into bars that I guess he used to go into after games. And then yeah, going to Maple Leafs game. Like anytime you work in these places, you're going to go to sports events, like whether you're going to the Blue Jays or the
Mhm.
Maple Leafs or the Canucks. That's the perks of sometimes working in a different city. You get to see a different stadium. Going to like I used to like Sky Dome was like in Toronto was so huge for me. But we went there. We used to live 2 blocks away, so we just walk. It was
Mhm.
like, wait, you can go to a stadium, not think about parking. Never heard of that, or not think of like the subway, which subways to take.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I didn't get to touch too much on the type 1 diabetes, but real quick, how
yeah.
has that affected your career? Like, is there much play into that now? Like, you're 8 years old when you get diagnosed. Of course, that must have just been hugely life changing. Is hugely a word? Um, does that affect your career very much present day?
It doesn't really, like I have an insulin pump and a continuous glucose monitor, so I'm like, and one of the newer ones, and so I'm kind of up with the technology finally. A
Mhm.
couple years ago, maybe not so much. So it's a high maintenance thing, but once you have it, kind of down to a little bit of a science, literally,
Mhm.
it makes performing and being on set easier, the technology, because at every moment I'm kind of able to be aware of where my blood sugar's at and where I'm, if I'm dropping or I'm raising, like my sugar's raising, I need to take some insulin, or if it's dropping, I'll probably need to have a juice. And it's never gotten in the way. And that was kind of like my main goal as an actor, to like not let something like this get in the way. But it has inspired me to kind of write a superhero comic book that I've been working on, and with my friends, about characters with chronic illnesses and disabilities that become superheroes by virtue of their chronic illness. Or so I have a character that was inspired by my experience, called Diabetes. So he's a character, a kid with diabetes that has an insulin pump, a CGM, and this, energy, this orb energy in our mythology, allows him to tap into his potential. It's called the kinetics. So it's like the ability of people with disabilities and chronic illnesses to have this potential that's untapped, but they in this world are the only people that could actually tap into that like extra energy. And so he becomes a cyborg called Diabetes.
Mhm.
And there's a couple other characters that we worked on. We wrote a graphic novel, and we had written a comic book series, and now we're trying to get it published as a graphic novel, 200-page graphic novel that we're kind of done with the manuscript and in the phase of pitching it out, and trying to see if there's someone that is interested in a story like that, an unconventional story like that.
Dude, that sounds amazing. I'm such a huge comic book fan. Real quick, what superpower would you want to have?
Oh my God. I would say my family and friends would be, I would want the superpower of being on time.
Oh,
Like,
as I'm making you late for your next interview.
no, yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, but in general, I am someone who moves slowly and at my own pace. And
Yeah.
so I guess in not being late, it would be speed, or something, doing things faster, like, because it's like one of those things where you were a kid. When I was a kid, I was fast, right? As a little leaguer, I was like the fastest on the team. And then I was a catcher a lot. And so somehow, usually catchers are not fast. And there's probably a reason, because it like the weight and the muscle development in a catcher kind of weighs them down in their legs. So, and wear and tear on the body. So by the time I was in high school and people had I was a late bloomer, so everyone was like bigger than me. I was one of the slower people on the team, which is a disadvantage when you're a little kid, when you're smaller than everyone. So I had a late growth spurt, and if I'd only hit it earlier, maybe I'd be playing baseball instead of being on the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel now. Actually, I'd probably be retired at 40.
Right. Both would be just fine though, right?
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time today and joining us. You're easy to find on Instagram and Twitter. Simply your name, Austin Basis, on both platforms. Have a great day, man. I appreciate you taking some time, and we'll see you online.